Here. We've got 59 people in the waiting room. Are we right on 12 o'clock? Yeah, we are. So ready? And here they come.
Sweet. All right. I love it when it just pours in like this. All right, welcome everybody. Special edition RocGrowth Candids style here. My name is Chris Cooley. You probably recognize me as MC Cooley from most of the other events that we've had. And I'm a local Rochester entrepreneur and huge supporter of RocGrowth, along with a couple of other folks that we have here who are going to be monitoring things behind the scenes. We got some special guests today. I will leave the introductions to my partner and collaborator here, Richard, in just a second. He's also going to be doing his best. Richard, would you say Charlie Rose impression today?
No, leave.
Dude, you're doing your own thing. That's what we say. And so I'm just going to kind of lay some ground rules here and guidelines, and we'll kick things off. But we're all a community in this RocGrowth endeavor, and that's why we have our Brady Bunch tiles here. If I guess what was the other one? It's there's also a game show.
Hollywood Squares.
Yeah, Hollywood Squares.
People. Yeah.
So we're doing that today. If everyone would please just remain on mute. We're going to have presenters here going through a conversation with Richard for about the next 35 minutes, something like that. As we are going through this conversation, please feel free to use the chat to ask questions. We may not get to your exact question, but what we will be doing is aggregating the questions so that the topics and themes are covered in this session. So we want to be efficient and make sure that that we're being able to still get your thoughts in and get you involved. So please feel free, put your thoughts and questions in the chat. Myself and Tom Myers will be available if you have specific questions, and we will proceed from there. If we have some time at the end, we might do like a little popcorn and people can make announcements, but we'll see what we have left on that. So without further ado, Richard, do you want to sort of give a little overview of what we're doing today?
I'll take the baton. Thank you. This is the 8th COVID era Zoom event we've had, and thank you for everyone's support. These have been trying times. We've been through many different phases, and it feels refreshing to return to a format that defined RocGrowth earlier, where we highlight our community's great entrepreneurs and innovators through RocGrowth Candids. It didn't feel so great in April and May when we had a call to action to really highlight the social entrepreneurs, the social service organizations, and appeal for their support because we were in terrible distress at that moment. And RocGrowth is about community. So I love this format. I love seeing all of you. The one benefit of doing it remotely this way is that more can participate, although we will record it and post it this evening. As a reminder, RocGrowth our mission involves 4 facets. They include empowering the new generation. I'm a testament to the fact that it doesn't all have to be young, but just new leadership is emerging, and it's time to rise. We also like to highlight our emerging and accomplished entrepreneurs and innovators. Instigate creative collisions. That's sometimes easier to do in person, but there are ways to do it digitally. And everything we do is informed by promoting greater equity, race, class, gender, and age. So we are about building community, and I hear a little echo. Okay. But I just want to highlight 2 books that have been published all within this last couple of months. I've read them both. One from Upstate's Martin Babinick, another from Brad Feld, who wrote the foreword. And these are amazing books I recommend. And they provide insights into how to build a healthy ecosystem. thank you, Martin Babinick, the founder of Upstate Venture Connect and successful startup company, now a publicly traded company called TriNet, because he identifies RocGrowth and the work we do as being a vital component to a healthy ecosystem. On that note, before we begin with the formal phase of the interview, I want to feature Josh Krager, who is somewhere among those tiles there within the screen. Josh, can we highlight you for a moment? Because I want you to have an opportunity to mention the work you're doing. Josh is a very dedicated individual to this region, both through central and western New York at Arrow Electronics. And if we can't highlight him now, we'll figure it out by the end and give him a moment to share with you the open coffee programs that he produces. So I don't think, there you are.
There it is. Well, thank you, Richard. As Richard mentioned, I'm Josh Krager, and I host the Rochester Open Coffee Club on Wednesday mornings. We draw various people that are interested in the Rochester startup community, from founders to investors to community stakeholders. And we really want to open and help foster more access to the city's resources through all of the various communities, just as Richard was talking about with RocGrowth. We meet Wednesday mornings starting about 7:30 and get rolling into discussion about 7:45. We've had special guests that present their startup for feedback leading into pitch competitions or for refinement in their process. And we've also had various speakers on to talk about their individual community initiatives. I'll put some links in the chat for our Zoom meeting, along with our Slack channel that is over 1,300 people stretching between Buffalo and Syracuse. And I'll put my email address in as well, so you can contact me directly. Thanks again, Richard.
Great. 7:30 isn't my ordinary time to join these things, but I've found them very refreshing, fulfilling, and I've made wonderful contacts through them. There's also a Slack channel you're involved with too. But so I like to call it the origin story. Let's start from the beginning. How did you guys end up in Rochester? I do know you attended RIT, but I know, Nick, you're from New Jersey, and Austin, you're from Connecticut.
That's correct.
Yeah, please tell us what it was like when you were 17 and you were considering what you were going to do after high school.
Nick, why don't you open there?
Sounds good. So I always knew I wanted to be an electrical engineer, focused on medical devices and biomedical technologies. So when I was looking at colleges, I was looking at programs that had joint, information around both, not quite, more than a minor, but not as much of a double major. I found RIT was one of the only schools on the East Coast that had that. So I applied early decision, got in, came to RIT, and it took me quite some time to branch out and spin out a company. But I was there for a number of years with 3 different degrees.
And I don't know, 17-year-old Austin was an arrogant jerk who thought that he was too good for homework. And so when it came time to apply to college, it turns out taking a bunch of AP and honors classes and C grades doesn't reflect well on you. And so I applied to lots of universities that ended in IT, but all the MITs and everybody else of the world was like, no, you're not going to make it. You're not worth it. And somehow, part of me thinks that it was actually just a typo, because I applied as electrical engineer to RIT. And when I arrived, they told me I was electrical engineering technology, and it took me 3 days to fix it back. But it might have been that luck that the wrong box got bubbled somewhere, and somehow I ended up at RIT. Granted, I made it through 1 year of electrical engineering at RIT, and I hated it. I had been a tinkerer. I built all this stuff myself, but it just turns out that they described it as a finished science. And it was everything you need to know about electrical engineering, these guys a long time ago figured it out. And so that was the most disappointing thing to me ever. And so I switched to bioinformatics, and mainly just because the academic advisor said everything that you learn in your first 2 years won't be worth anything because it'll be out of date by the time you graduate. And so I actually really enjoyed bioinformatics. And that's one of the things that's kind of exciting, is to get back into the biomedical space here with Nick.
Cool. So Nick, you spent 10 years schooling there. It wasn't because it took you 10 years to complete your undergraduate degree, right?
Correct.
Yeah, I want to use this to sort of like we have limited time, but there was a progression there. You somehow stayed there, got another
Yeah.
year. And I'm just curious about that because you have a PhD. You discuss it, but now you're an entrepreneur. Take us through that like progression.
Yeah, so I always actually wanted to be an entrepreneur. I looked at, read all the starting business books in high school. I followed all the news stories of companies getting started, going public. And I went to RIT, again, just enjoying being an engineer. Made it through my 5 years of my undergrad, the 5-year engineering program in electrical engineering. I did multiple co-ops as RIT required and still does, which is just a great program. And one of my co-ops was actually in Berlin, Germany, where I worked at an implantable medical device company, which pushed me more towards cardiology, which happened to then continue. With my senior design project, I worked on more medical device technologies, decided to try to start a business around it by myself, which didn't go great. And I eventually came back to Rochester from New Jersey to continue my master's, where I met Dave Borkholder, who was my advisor. And Dave and I formed a great relationship as I went through my master's, working on optical heart rate sensors and improving the power efficiency of those, the same sensors that are in most wearables. And Dave knew that I wanted to be an entrepreneur, and then spent about 9 months trying to convince me to stay for my PhD. Which I did not want to do. I was really itching to get into industry and make a difference. Yet he convinced me, and it was really such a great fortuitous decision, where Dave and I worked with Dave during my PhD, and we had a really great opportunity to submit a grant to Google for in-home monitoring of cardiovascular disease. And that's where the technology that Heart Health Intelligence is commercializing came about. So I, always knew I wanted to be an entrepreneur, and really figured that to do it right in the medical device space, you needed additional credibility. You needed the additional research that a PhD would afford you. So that was the big motivation for me, was to be able to make the biggest impact and the biggest difference, is to just continue my education and continue pushing the boundaries of what's possible with the medical devices as they exist.
I think that's one of the things that makes it so exciting to work with Nick, is just that he continually sees where that stuff can go and how to push the boundaries. And we joke in the office that we work with the Elon Musk of toilet seats, and that is Nick's case. And he can see all of the amazing things that could actually do and improve people's lives and their health, and ultimately help people live longer, save lives, etc. And it's such a inspiring thing to be involved in, compared to what a lot of other startups do.
Yeah, this is a good opportunity, because when I disseminated information about the event, I did not describe the company. I know you're still very much in development phase, so maybe you can explain the technology and both where it's at now and where where you're working to take it.
Yeah, sure. So the core product is it is a medical device that is targeted for people with like serious chronic conditions like congestive heart failure. And it can collect a whole bunch of information about the body and your vitals, way more than any wearable might be able to do. And it can do it without you having to change any of your routine, or even know that it exists in your life, because it is a toilet seat, which is like the unsexiest thing you could imagine, but it's actually brilliant. And it's Nick's passion in life's work, and we're working to get sort of version 1 out there, and we're taking the absolute hardest road, which is saying that we want this to meet the gold standard, like any other product that like is used in a doctor's office, and not just sort of like, oh, cool, it's a heart rate monitor on your wrist or something. This is like, no, we can make medical decisions based on this. And that becomes really important because it means people don't need to leave their homes to provide this data. And this data is ultimately going to be some of the most valuable set of vitals that doctors collect, and will allow them to make decisions about people's care on a regular, more frequent basis, and also detect when people are deteriorating at a higher rate of frequency. And where it goes in the future, there's so much we can add. And that's where, I'm going to stress that the Elon Musk of toilet seats not share all our secrets on this meeting, but like Nick's vision and roadmap stretches out into the future. And he envisions it the same way that, you hear about SpaceX is talking about, what type of, house you're going to have on Mars. Like Nick is envisioning how this thing is going to distribute and change and just do all these things in your life. And it's just really cool to work with somebody who's such a visionary.
I've gotten to know Nick over the last year or two, and I've rarely met someone that humble and, low key. And what's incredible is the external validation you've received, Nick. I know early investors included an angel group out of San Diego, which is known as being a cluster for biomedical and biotech. One of the largest toilet bowl companies was a strategic investor. And then Austin, while you're trolling RIT, you developed a relationship with Nick and brought in, discuss the financing and what attracted you and how. And also, I would love for you to touch upon the timing, because I believe what we're experiencing now with COVID highlights certain issues around this business or the technology.
Yeah, so I think, personally, I was looking for kind of what is the next act, and got to know some people here in the Boston area really, really well, including this guy, Jeff Leiden, who's executive at a pharma company, like a really big one. And he happens to be really great, really brilliant guy. And so we were just chatting about the future. And from there, started to sort of have the conversation about different ideas. And that's really the point where, when I described Nick's thing, because I had always known about it and was like, yo, there's this guy that I know of, and he's super passionate about toilet seats. And all of a sudden Jeff goes like, holy crap, that's actually genius. Like that's brilliant. And so it's like, all right, well, let's put them together. We got Nick and Jeff communicating, and then, Nick and I were chatting, and it really became clear. And Nick was ultimately like, hey, can you help out on this journey? And so for me, it was like, yeah, I want to do this. This is exciting. And, it's a little too early to share all the details of the fundraising, but it was a very substantial raise, and I put in a bunch of money. Jeff did. Frankly, we had people lining up around the block to get involved. And we did that deal. And so now, we're really, really well capitalized and moving to take this to market, and moving, probably at a speed that's not normally common for Rochester businesses. We're just going at it to try to eat the whale here. And it's really exciting and really fun to design this stuff and to build something that's truly new. And much in the same way that, like, I think about, lots of places are tried and true, or where it's like, hey, Airbnb is cool because they use technology to do something. We are inventing new technology every day. And we've got, PhDs on staff, Nick included, and we're pushing kind of the boundaries of what's possible. And that, like, there's nothing more exciting to wake up in the morning and think about than that.
So one of the things people might not be familiar with is that U of R also has a strong biomedical engineering program. I mean, Nick, I believe you've collaborated with U of R, right? For some of the resources.
Yes. So early on, when Dave and I started working on the concept initially at RIT, we started partnering with Carl Schwartz, who is the director of echocardiography at the University of Rochester. And that was just a phenomenal partnership from the beginning, where Carl helped guide our clinical vision, but more importantly, he had a really, really solid understanding of the physiology and how the body works His undergrad was physics, so he brought a lot of that perspective to the table when we began the research. And as Austin said, we were discovering new things. We still continue to discover new things as we move forward on the path to commercialization. But early on, we took a technology that had been discovered in the 40s, or actually I think it was the 1930s, which is called the ballistic cardiogram, which measures the mechanical forces of the heart. But rather than going into the weeds here, it became less interesting to researchers when the echocardiogram was created, where you can actually look at the heart. So that's Carl's expertise. So we combined the two, and we're able to really find innovative methods for extracting parameters from the heart, using this match made in heaven, so to speak, between Carl, Dave, and I. And we took that research to the point where there was joint publications with Carl and Dave and I. And then I formed the business, and really just am so thrilled to have Austin, Olivia, the whole team, who we now have. We've grown to quite a few members since the last 3 months. And I feel like we're just really well positioned to grow this and be very successful.
Cool. So God knows there's so much information flow. Usually it's from a Zoom call or something, but obviously one of the implications of the pandemic is that it's accelerated the embrace of certain technologies and highlighted some weaknesses in the system. And I can conjecture, but I'd love to hear both, one, with regard to the technology and the business, how that might have this might provide some wind behind your backs, and then how this might impact how you're going to design building out your company in terms of a distributed organization. So for A, the technology, and then B, how you're going to design your company.
Yeah, so I think the pandemic has really just opened everybody's eyes to what can be done remotely. Not necessarily that we want to do everything remotely, but certainly it can be done. And medical care is one that the technology to make telemedicine possible has actually been around for a couple of years now. And it took this sort of forcing function for it to go into the mainstream and people to accept it. And so I think that even after the pandemic lifts, there's still going to be a huge desire to do more things remotely and take advantage of that technology more often. And so that's going to help us a huge amount. And it really just accelerates kind of our progress and accelerates the demand for our product. On the second piece around building the company, one of the things when you want to go build a new startup is you need to hire the smartest, most passionate people you can find. Full stop, pandemic or not. And so for us, we cast a pretty wide net. And if that means that we find people and they live off the beaten path and they're nowhere where any of us are, but their role can be done remotely, we'll absolutely hire them. At the same time, a big part of building any company, and especially a startup company, is culture. And sewing that team together and really feeling like you're a team, you're working together, you're driving forward on this project and building something new. And having a few physical nexus points really helps with that. And one of the first things we did after closing the deal is we want to make sure, Nick, let's get some space we can call our own. And so we did that in Rochester, and that was the first lease that we closed and signed. And then we got a little bit of space for the Boston team. And that balance actually works well for us because Rochester has an incredible talent base of excellent engineers and scientists that we can put to work on this project. And we find that in Boston, we can find people that really have those deep connections to both the US and the global healthcare community that we're going to need to sell and market this product to. And so between those 2 points, we think that we can build kind of the primary nexuses of what represent our company. And from there, of course, there'll be people spread all across the world, but those are the 2 areas that we're looking to grow. And at least for me, it's something that I'm pretty familiar and experienced with. And Datto, had many, many jobs in Rochester, still does, still hires in Rochester, continues to grow there. And we expect to hopefully bring lots and lots of jobs to the Rochester region, as well as obviously bringing jobs to the Boston area.
One thing that I'm, excited about too is the culture that we're building here at HHI. It's amazing how even shortly after the deal, it felt like a cohesive family, even though we added so many people to the team. And as we continue to grow, we're focusing so much on building a healthy, happy culture here of where everybody feels trusted, where we can, really push the boundaries of what we're doing, while moving quickly and with purpose. And that's something that I really admire with Austin is his focus on building this really great culture. And we're so well aligned on the kind of culture that we want to build here. And I think it is reflected in our employees and how much everybody just seems to really enjoy working on this, and working together too, even remotely. We really do feel like a cohesive family, just like every other family out there has to pull together remotely these days. We're doing it well, I think, given the challenges of the times.
Yeah, I think we're well aligned on everything except what Nick considers a fantastic bagel.
Ugh.
One
One of the key things, like Nick, is like everybody has to have these bagels. They're awesome. They're amazing. And we're like, oh, Nick, I think there's more bagel out there than what you have seen. But we'll get there.
This is like a Connecticut, New Jersey thing going on with New York.
Yeah, Connecticut and New Jersey hate each other.
So, first of all, Austin, we spoke earlier. I didn't congratulate you for the Datto IPO. I know you didn't do it single-handedly, but you took it from start to IPO, which is not that common of a phenomenon. And again, timing, obviously, the IPO market for certain technologies is quite flush. So I'm not sure if everyone's aware that Datto is now a significant publicly traded company. So congratulations, man. What was it like ringing the bell?
It was really cool, but it's also sort of amazing. It's like you think of it as this mythical thing out there, and you go and it's going to feel special, and it's actually like a high volume wedding venue that they, like, you are there, they're going to make it cool, and then like 2:30 is going to turn around and they're like, your banner's gone, we're getting the next one up, get the hell out of the building, like we're getting ready for then. It's just, moves through, and it's production. But I think, it's an incredible milestone for the business. And when you think about it, like the way that I talk to the company about it is just these series of starting lines. And when the company started, there was a starting line, hey, we're in the basement. And then, oh my goodness, there's a starting line of like, this is our first day in a new office. And this is, our first day after closing fundraising, or this is our first day after working with private equity. And so now we kind of had our first day as a public company. And it's one of the last starting lines that there is. And to get that far is really cool. But at the same time, business is built on continually moving upward. And so it is another day one, and thinking about, how do we build now that everybody can see what we're doing? And that's an exciting challenge for the team there. And I know that, they're really optimistic about the future and how the business is doing.
Yeah, and what share of the workforce is first of all, Vista Equity, one of the top private equity firms, came in and acquired a majority, is that correct?
Yeah, so we sort of did the let me collect all the different life tiles of company life stages. So we had the bootstrap for 6 years, did the venture backed for 5 years, did the private equity owned for 3 years, and now we're on to the public entity version. And I don't think there are many other, I guess last would be like acquired, but those are sort of all of the different ways that you could live as an independent entity. The thing to say with each of those different pieces is that all of your investors, whether they're seed investors, whether they're your employees, whether they're venture capitalists or private equity, they want to see the company grow and become more valuable in the future. And Datto has been incredibly fortunate that it has pretty much just an uninterrupted line of growth since the beginning. And what happens is that when you say what you're going to do and then you do what you say, your investors are like, this is not broken. We are not going to spend our time here. And we are not going to mess with what you're doing. And so Datto has enjoyed a tremendous amount of freedom in how we operate, how we build, what our culture is, where we put our energy, because we've been successful. And it's when you start to stumble that your investors are like, well, maybe do this, maybe think about that, maybe you're spending too much money here, maybe you're this, and they start asking all these questions. And so in that sense, Datto has been so fortunate in being a successful business all the way through. And so that's a big part of how the company's been able to maintain its soul and who it is along that trajectory. And that's what's going to allow it to continue to do that even as a public entity.
Well, I'm certain you had a lot of support along the way, some good mentoring and advisors. So it's awesome that you're involved in Rochester again and trying to regenerate that type of success, because now you have some of that experience you can apply. And part of the reason why we at RocGrowth wanted to have you here is to highlight for the community, and I believe there are now 120 people, participants, to understand that this stuff is going on around them in Rochester, that we've departed from that large company hierarchical infrastructure. The legacy exists in many organizations throughout town, not just businesses. Businesses, well, they'll live and die. But that mentality has been changing. And I just want to share with you, Austin, that there are others that are moving gazelle pace. In this company, they're not also as visible. And we need to highlight it. But I thank you so much for, at this phase, I know there's some discomfort because you don't have a product yet, you're early in your phase and you don't want to get ahead of yourselves, to just sharing all of this information for us. So thank you. When I first, sorry, Nick, I'm going to focus on Austin for one moment, because I heard you speak publicly maybe 2 years ago. And I just said, like, this guy, 100% entrepreneur DNA. Would you mind, if you recall, repeating your take on the fast ferry?
I don't recall, other than, I think it's just that, like, Rochester has this history of, like, dreaming bigger than it's ever been able to fulfill. And whether it's the subway or the fast ferry, like, there are people in Rochester who really dream that Rochester will become this big, iconic, meaningful, important city. And in that sense, like, it's heartening and cool to see that that's part of the city DNA. Unfortunately, like, cities struck out a lot. And it's surprising too, considering, you know, what a diverse set of really incredible companies were built in Rochester. You know, it still has that. And I think that when you look at the people that you hire there, they're dreaming big. And even if you look at the startups that come out of Rochester, you know, it is far less like, oh, I'm going to build an app that makes it easier for me to have a video chat with my friends. And it's far more like, well, this is going to change the world. And we're changing how people are going to consume energy, or we're changing, you know, how everything in the world is going to be shipped. And so there is this dreaming big part of Rochester that is really cool, that's sort of baked into the city's DNA. Hopefully, like, the city's going to execute and actually deliver on some of these things, and Rochester will become a big, important, meaningful city.
So people don't understand, because I actually see someone in the chat, their comment to this is epic fail. And how many times have you failed in building Datto or along the way? Or Nick, I mean, people don't appreciate that that's part of the entrepreneurial innovation process.
Yeah,
so,
it cuts both ways, because it's like Datto required the successful execution of, like, a whole bunch of Hail Marys. And there were a lot of cases where, like, you know, we were going to go out of business and we were days from going out of business, and then we did something different and it succeeded. At the same time, in venture capital, I've seen a whole bunch of really smart, really capable, awesome people throw Hail Marys and have it, you know, bounce. It just didn't work. And so it's very hard. Like, a huge part of it is luck. But I will say that, like, if you don't make those leaps, if you don't jump to go do it, you know, you're going to end up regretting it, and you certainly won't be successful, because almost everybody who, you know, has built anything big and meaningful and important has had to pass through that kind of great filter. That doesn't mean that just because you're willing to take that jump, it's going to work. But it's almost like those jumps are required to get there and to be successful. And yes, Rochester as a city has made some of those jumps and it hasn't worked. But I do applaud them for like making and thinking and dreaming, you know, bigger than perhaps they are. And that's the only way that the city will ever get there.
I caution you, Hail Mary took on a new meaning Sunday night in our community, if you're a Bills fan. So there's...
I grew up in Connecticut, so I'm a Jets Mets fan, so that's like also super painful.
How about you, Nick? What do you...
Yankees is what I grew up with, more with baseball than football.
Anyway, let's just return back to the business for a moment, because as I'm contemplating this company can play out on a global scale, right? And I mean, what are the metrics that you're generating? Like, for instance, what might have appeared in the investment package for the VC fund? Some of the data. Just give us a sense of the.
I think it's early, and for us, what it's about is we have this basically Nick's incredible PhD project, and we have to make this transition from being scientists to being engineers. And Nick is a brilliant scientist, and scientists, you know, work on research and studies and projects. But engineers work on products, and products have to ship. And so we're going through the whole process of how do we get this to actually ship, and how do we make this thing, how do we get the circuit boards, all the different pieces, how do we think about assembling it, what screws go in there. And, you know, when I started, there were maybe 4 of these toilet seats that might have existed in the whole world. And, you know, now that number is way up, and continues to grow up. And we talked about it, and I think like our only metric now, because we're pre kind of FDA, it is sits. And so how many data sets have we collected from somebody using it? And Nick and I are having this conversation about the quest to 1 billion sits. And we've got a sit counter, and we're tracking that. Unfortunately, the number of sits that we've acquired is very highly proprietary at the moment, so I cannot share it with you. But we are looking for 1 billion sits on a toilet seat, and we're going to try to get there as quickly as possible. And someday, like, we'll have this super cool little chart, and you'll see this awesome hockey stick curve that shows, you know, all this information that we've collected, and then from that, we can distill out, you know, how it's impacted both saving healthcare systems tons of money, and of course saving lives and improving, you know, people's lives.
Cool. I'm trying to navigate through the chat and find some questions.
Richard, I have some questions that we've synthesized on the back end. Do you want me to just chime in here?
Yeah, this is let me why delay? You know, obviously building a startup community involved supporting entrepreneurs and having the successful ones come back and help other entrepreneurs or do it again. I mean, again, Austin, you're remarkably generous to RIT. We don't need to go down that path. Those are amazing signs of elements, ingredients for a healthy ecosystem. But this is an opportunity for you to have an ask for us. And I know you have some office space, but you also have some job openings, and you might as well describe how we might be helpful to you all.
Yeah, I mean, we're looking to hire some incredibly talented folks. We're seeking electrical engineers and software engineers to help us build the core technology of this product. And we're seeking people who have a specialty in sort of a clinical space. And then, you know, as we move through the process of executing our clinical studies and getting clearance, that job board is going to just blow up as far as the different things that we need as we build this company out. And whether that's support around installation, whether that's dealing with all the different health systems, support and training with the nurses and doctors, there's just all kinds of roles that we're going to need. And we're obviously going to need to continue to build an engineering team. And you know, it's no secret if you work with the Elon Musk of toilet seats, he actually envisions way more than just that. And so there's going to be a whole broad platform of different products and devices built under and around this company And this is early days. We're just getting started here.
Cool. Are there any other things? I'm just reviewing any other ways that you think.
Richard, there's a question that came in that I think is pretty great. Do you mind if I ask it?
No, you go. You got my back, buddy.
All right. I guess this goes out to both Nick and Austin, but someone asked, what are your plans regarding local manufacturing, office space, and types of job roles you envision filling in Rochester specifically?
So right now, almost all of our manufacturing is in the US. Believe it or not, a toilet seat's actually hard to make. It's a large piece of plastic, and if there's even the tiniest imperfection in the design, you'll notice. Apparently, we are all the princess and the pea when it comes to that. And so finding people who actually know how to do that well is hard to come by, and we're working with a great manufacturing partner in Sheboygan, Wisconsin, to actually build that product. In Rochester, we're building out our research and development lab. So both the tools necessary to test the seat, as well as designing and thinking about all of those future products. So pretty much all of the super secret R&D crazy cool stuff is going to happen in Rochester. And we got space just outside of downtown near the airport. And it's like across the street actually from like MCC that is a good starting spot for us that allows us to build out that lab space and get going. And then I think that, you know, as the team grows, I am a big proponent of supporting downtown and sort of consolidating business together and trying to create that community. And so would love to grow into space downtown, but that's, you know, years down the road a little bit as we've got to get rolling and start selling some stuff.
I have another one. This one's more for Nick. I know, Nick, you mentioned the positive cultural experience, even just in formulating the team, the original team. Can you share some concrete examples of how you're building a positive and connected culture?
Yeah, so, you know, one of the things that we like to do here is have an open ear for any opinion, any comment. Austin runs weekly meetings. We have an all hands meeting every week. And one of the great additions that Austin has as CEO is anonymous questions. You could ask Austin any question and he will answer it. And it just creates this great culture where, you know, nobody is actually, it's funny, we have had very few anonymous questions because everybody just asks their questions. And everyone feels comfortable doing so. And some of them are funny, like, Austin, what's your favorite, you know, candy? And others are more, you know, along, what are we doing with our roadmap from a technology standpoint? And, you know, it creates this open environment where we really do feel like a team, and even some silly, maybe not silly, but fun things like what is your favorite candy stemmed from, we asked every single employee what their favorite candy was, and we stocked it in our break room. And you know, things like that we plan to continue doing, and COVID makes it a little bit more challenging. One of the things that I know that we started to try to do was take everybody out who starts to their favorite restaurant, so that we can build this, you know, these relationships and feel comfortable, which we can't do as much anymore now. But you know, we're finding alternatives that allow us to really, you know, eat lunch virtually together. It's silly, but, you know, there's little things like that where you then become more like a cohesive whole rather than a disparate set of individuals working towards a goal.
It's great. Thank you for that. Richard, I have to say, I think 25 people dropped off when you mentioned Sunday's game. So maybe refrain from those bad news next time. One thing that I do want to do before we cut out, we do this like photo of everyone, and I've done plenty of Zoom meetings that we just took a snapshot of all the grid of people, and people were like, you know, picking their nose, not paying attention. Yeah, Richard just rubbed his nose. I think that's a sign. Tom, would you want to take a photo of everyone just real quick? If everybody can do like their cheesiest, like say toilet seat or something like that, and smile. Tommy, I think you're on mute.
We have so many people on right now. It will take multiple pictures, so please hold on for a second while we put them.
This is that wonderful awkward silence in a Zoom chat, right?
It's okay. When you take your company public, you have to clap for 2 minutes.
Clap
like
for
2
2
minutes
minutes.
straight, which is a really long time. And you have to, and they're like, more vigorous, like keep clapping, keep clapping. They
So
just
they
keep telling you, keep going, and you're like, this is ridiculous. You're just staring at a wall of TV cameras. There's no feedback. You just have to keep clapping.
Wow, so they have like a
Very
clapping
strange.
coach. They have a clapping coach there for you to like.
They do, yeah, about just this is how you do it. They've got a whole person that like goes through and it's just like, okay, we're gonna walk you through. This is what's gonna happen. Like,
Too much clapping, not enough flap.
yeah,
Yeah.
yep.
Gotcha.
We are all set. Thank you all. Just want to remind you, we are using the Western New York Slack channel that was mentioned. We have a RocGrowth channel in there. Already, many of the comments that people have put are put up there, and some of the links will be put up there. We are recording this. This whole recording will be available within about a week. It'll be up on our website. And so please, if you liked it or want to relive it, you can view it online.
Thank you.
That was we have a core group of individuals who've really risen to the occasion since March. And that's Tom Myers. Thank you, Tom. He's basically responsible for just about everything except the interview. And Chris Cooley. And also on Andrew Brady, who is involved with conscious capitalism in Rochester and Rochester Young Professionals. But there's a young woman who I hope is on right now. Her name is Dara Ali. And she has taken a gap year. She will be attending NYU, figuring that this was a good year to just sort of lie low. She's our intern. And if anyone has an internship opportunity, perhaps HHI, you wouldn't find a more fantastic individual responsible than Zara. She's a graduate of Pittsburgh, I think, Mendon, just last year.
We're always looking for good interns.
She's right now in London. There's a family illness, so she and her family just is out there. That's why she has sort of spotty service, she said, at the moment. But that maybe, hey, Zara, if you're there, maybe I help find something. But any of the other individuals, if you know of her.
So, Richard, Tom sounds ready. Can we pause and have everyone wave or do like a peace sign and just say toilet?
I think it already happened.
It already happened?
We already did it, yes.
Tom, you're so sneaky.
Good.
Good job. All right. One other question that came in, guys. We've got 10 minutes ish. I'm going to throw this one out there, and then Richard, I'll let you take over from there. But what was the hardest part of starting the companies, and how were those obstacles overcome initially?
Nick, you want to go first?
Sure. It's for me, what was really challenging was finding the right investors. And one of the best pieces of advice that I got early on from Rich, one of the coaches at RIT's Venture Creations, was, keep pitching, keep refining, but you will find the right investors. And if it's a hard no, have confidence in what you're doing. Tell a cohesive story, but just keep looking for those right investors. And it was a grueling, many months looking for those right investors for us. And over that time, refining and polishing the story was really critical. But when you find the right investor, you know it, and it's a good fit for everybody. You feel like you just could conquer the world together. And it's just the tenacity to hang in there and just keep searching. You will get so many no's. I can't tell you how many no's that I got over the 9 months of looking for the seed round and then continuing on as we were looking to raise for our Series A. But just knowing what you know, having confidence in your story, but also continuing to refine it, is the big challenge that I faced at the beginning there.
You were also at the Venture Connect incubator, correct?
I don't believe so.
Were you at?
He's at Venture Creations.
Venture Creations at RIT, yeah.
Yeah.
You were in that facility near John Street, right?
Yeah, Ken and I had our 2 little baby tiny offices there for many months before we grew significantly, but it was a great starting point. The coaching is phenomenal, and it was just really a great learning experience to push the boundaries, to connect me with the local network here in Rochester was really helpful. And I use that as a springboard to go look across the country. And as you mentioned, Richard, finding investors with the Tech Coast Angels in California, they're just phenomenal. And really, Rochester prepared me well for going out. The community here is brutally honest in the best kind of way for giving you feedback around your pitch and your story and your vision. So when I went to Boston, when I went to California, I felt very well prepared and was able to tell just such a great story that resonated with those investors.
I want to mention, Nick, I went to I believe it was a Shark Tank that you gave your presentation on, or the company about the toilet seat. First of all, it was well done, but it's really interesting going to these early presentations at things like the RIT Shark Tank, and I'm sure U of R has other ones out it. So if you see those pop up, they're worthwhile watching. You'll see what's happening in 3 or 4 years. That's like 2 years ago, maybe. So,
yeah, I think you know, at least my journey. My original idea was so bad, no one would invest. And so I had to bootstrap it. And it was only after we had traction that, you know, people showed up. And at that point, like, VCs were just knocking on our door. And we never sort of did the pitching tour. Like, I think sum total in the history of Datto, prior to selling it, like, I maybe pitched like 6 or 8 times and raised $100 million. So there's different roads. After being a VC for a year, honestly, like, the biggest thing that Rochester companies do is they ask for too little amount of money. And believe it or not, it is easier to go raise 2 to 5 million than it is to raise 200 to 500,000. And somewhat, like, the more confident, the more crazy that you just absolutely believe what you're doing and you want an enormous amount of money behind this, the more VCs go, wow, they're nuts. We got to get behind this. And I have an April Fool's deck that I pitched to the venture capital firm that I worked at. There was total bullshit and ended with this demo, but I had a friend come in and pitch it. And the comments that were occurring internally while they were pitching, they were getting really excited. And mainly because this person was, like, absolutely fearless because it didn't matter. And even though everything they were saying was totally ridiculous, people were getting behind it. And so, like, if you're building something, it's actually easier to go all in, ask for an enormous amount than it is to ask for what you feel is reasonable, or a couple $100,000, or, oh, this will just get me to the next step. And so I would say, like, dream and ask for a lot, and you'll actually do better. And, you know, you can always accept a smaller amount down the road.
So that reminds me of Austin Powers.
Yeah. Yeah, I can post that deck. I'll send it to you, and you can put it in your Slack, and just, like, to give you an idea of, like, how little it takes to get them really excited.
So another, tying into something previously mentioned, Venture Creations, it's now public, has announced that it will be, or RIT announced that it's relocating Venture Creations to the building where Datto in Rochester got its start. So I think that's really a positive move, personally.
We sprinkled some good juju in there, so should be good luck.
Yeah. Right downtown at the 40 Franklin Square, the old Rochester Savings Bank building, and near where many software companies have been relocating. So, Chris, are there any other questions that have popped up, or?
There were some really specific, sort of more granular questions, but we covered the bigger theme topics, and so I really appreciate it, guys. And I think we've got a couple minutes left, Richard. I don't know how you want
to wrap up. I don't want to leave this. We don't generally do a noon call. We're trying to get our sea legs on this, but I'll ask Austin and Nick if they want to share any passing, final thoughts or provide any final comments.
I think, thank you guys so much for taking the time. We are super excited to be building in Rochester. I know that for me to get to work on another project that continues to help Rochester be successful is awesome. And I told Nick that he's on the hook for the next $50 million donation to RIT. So we're going to work together to make sure that he's able to make that. Then Adam Platzer can chalk 2 of them up. But yeah.
I think
Nick?
President Munson, did you hear that? Deb Stendardi, I think they're out there.
Yes, we
Yeah.
definitely heard.
All right.
They're watching. Nick, you'll get called.
We heard it. We heard it.
Anyway, on that note, it's so great to see both of you. Oh my God, I miss seeing everyone. But on that note, we have another great social entrepreneur in this community who's quite remarkable and nationally renowned, and his name is Norm Silverstein, and he is the CEO of our public radio and PBS affiliate, along with an organization that owns the Art Theater, the Little Theater, and City Newspaper. And he is a professional journalist, and he conducts interviews, and he agreed to be the interviewee on December 15th. So I've learned over the years, in order to attract these technologists to a community, you need a complete package. You need the arts and the cultures and a nice place to live. So with that in mind, I would enjoy if you all consider returning on December 15th, when RocGrowth is going to produce our next RocGrowth Candids event. If you're not registered, go to our website, just provide us your name and email address to be added to the list. We don't spam, we just use it to inform you of important upcoming events. And I wish all of you a wonderful and safe Thanksgiving. We encourage you to take proper precautions. These are parlous times, and we want all of you to be back here next month healthy. Thank you. Thank you all.
Thanks everyone for being here, and we'll catch up with you soon.